Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about the new movie, Gladiator II. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing. That way I don't have to enter the Colosseum and fight for my life. The synopsis is as follows. Years after witnessing the death of the revered hero Maximus at the hands of his uncle, Lucius is forced to enter the Colosseum after his home is conquered by the tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome with an iron fist. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, Lucius must look to his past to find strength and honor to return the glory of Rome to its people. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. So this movie opens with Lucius at his home, and we find out very quickly that he's part of this small town that Rome does not have control over yet. But the twin emperors of Rome want to conquer so much, and this town is next in their sights. The town gets conquered, Lucius gets captured, but shows really good fighting chops, and so he's taken to be a gladiator, and the story goes on from there. Does that sound familiar? Because that sounded familiar to me. In a nutshell, this movie's plot is basically the exact same as Gladiator, only a lot worse. There were so many different elements about the first one that led to its success, and it seemed like almost all of those were missing in this movie. Despite this movie being rather long, the plot felt empty and rushed at points. And ultimately, when you arrive at the end of the film, it's very anticlimactic. I guess I was hoping Gladiator II would be an actual sequel with a different storyline, but something just as compelling, especially with Ridley Scott returning to direct this one. But it really just felt like a LaCroix version of the first, which was very disappointing. So for me, plot gets a thumbs down. 2 is family friendliness. Gladiator II is rated R. There's a very light bit of profanity, if any at all, a mild to moderate bit of violence including blood and gore, and a handful of disturbing and violent moments throughout. There's also a couple moments of sensual dialogue, but nothing extremely explicit. It didn't feel like there was a ton in this movie, but just enough to push it to an R rating. And because of that, I think you need to use your discretion, but for me, family friendliness gets a 50-50. 3 is acting and script. Paul Mescal plays Lucius, and his performance was okay. There are obviously multiple factors that go into whether or not you can connect with a character, but I thought his performance was kind of flat, to be honest. But it wasn't just him. Denzel Washington gave arguably one of the worst performances of his career. It felt kind of lifeless, which I hate saying about Denzel Washington because he is one of the GOATs for me. Honestly, I think Pedro Pascal's performance was probably the best, which is not saying a whole lot. And the script of this movie, meh. Once again, it just feels like a lot of the dialogue was just copied and pasted, and it just was uninspired and empty. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Joseph Quinn is in this movie. And I think maybe the reason why I forgot to mention it is because his acting performance is dull and terrible, and he's barely given any script in the movie or really anything to do, period. Obviously, there's no doubt here that you're dealing with talented actors, but they can only do so much when the script is just lifeless as it felt in this movie. So for me, acting and script get a thumbs down. 4 is character development. Now here comes potentially the worst and most influential part of this movie. Lucius essentially is the Maximus of this movie, but it felt like the character arc for Maximus was split between Lucius and a couple other characters in this movie, and it just created this watered down effect where you don't care about any of them. They don't set up the character of Lucius very well. It felt rushed and just shallowed out his character development. And so you spend the rest of the movie trying to find a reason to really care, and it just didn't do anything for me. But it's not limited to Lucius. You don't feel a whole lot for Marcus, which is a shame, and he doesn't get a whole lot of character development either. And Macrinus, who arguably is more of a main character than Lucius, is as shallow as a kiddie pool. The 2 emperors as antagonists are absolutely terrible and do nothing for the movie or for character development, and they don't get any character development themselves. In fact, you're just told repeatedly how evil and terrible they are, and you never actually end up getting to see it. So for me, character development gets a thumbs down. 5 is visuals and CGI. There was some very clear and obvious CGI in this movie, and it was okay. But I think the more important thing here to talk about is the visuals. Gladiator had some epic fight scenes that you were very clearly able to understand and had some very awesome dynamics throughout. And once again, Gladiator 2 had some uninspired fight sequences that just felt empty and were not very entertaining. Had the movie been better in other areas, I think they would have been okay, but they were nothing to write home about. So for me, visuals and CGI get a 50-50. And 6 is rewatchability. Gladiator 2 falls just shy of 2.5 hours long, and because of the pacing issues and the long sequences of dialogue-heavy moments that didn't have much feeling in them, this movie felt long. It felt like you were constantly searching for something to care about because the movie didn't give you a hand at all, and you just find yourself feeling empty and wanting to watch the first one again. It's not that I don't think that Gladiator could have had a sequel, because I absolutely think it could have, but not like this. Why would you do that? For me, rewatchability gets a thumbs down. With all these areas considered, I have to give Gladiator II a 3 out of 10. This movie seemed to have all the right pieces to make a good film, but it absolutely could not execute on any of those fronts. It had pacing issues, absolutely no character development, uncertain antagonists that were absolutely terrible, and most of all, it didn't create anything new. It really just copied and pasted a bunch of stuff from the first film, hoping that the nostalgia was enough to carry the film. And it absolutely wasn't. So with all that in mind, Gladiator 2 is not worth going and spending your money to go see. But you know what is worth your money and is entertaining? Going to your local thrift store and finding a copy of Gladiator on DVD, plugging it in, and having yourself an excellent weekend. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Gladiator 2, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.